The illusion of safety. You think you're free. You go to work. You make decisions. You scroll. You smile. You tell yourself, I'm doing fine. But something feels off, like a quiet unease you can't name. A restlessness that lingers when the world goes quiet. A voice you keep silencing. You wake up and realize you're living a life that looks like yours, but doesn't feel like you. Carl Jung believed that most people live in masks, not because they're dishonest, but because they're afraid. Afraid of judgment, afraid of rejection, afraid of what they might find if they finally looked inward. He called it the persona, the version of you crafted for acceptance. The face you wear at work, the smile you force when you're crumbling inside. The roles you perform so the world keeps clapping. But behind the persona, buried beneath the noise, is the truth of who you are. And that truth isn't always pretty. It's messy, raw, terrifying, which is why so many never go looking for it. Because the persona keeps you safe, but it also keeps you small. And if you stay there too long, you begin to forget who you were before the mask. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you felt real? Not useful, not productive, real. Jung believed that true freedom begins the moment you stop performing and start listening to your fears, to your longings, to the voice that says, there's more to you than this. But here's the problem. The path to your true self doesn't begin in comfort. It begins in chaos. Because before you become who you are, you have to let go of who you are not. And that letting go, it feels like dying. Your routines, your old beliefs, your need to be liked, they don't go quietly. Take a deep breath. Right now, ask yourself, what part of me do I show to be accepted? And what part of me have I buried to feel safe? If that stirred something in you, good. That's where we begin. In the next part, we'll dive into the shadow, the hidden parts of yourself that shape your fears, your choices, and your relationships. The shadow you're afraid to see. What if I told you the thing you're most afraid of is not failure, not rejection, not even death, but your own potential? Not the light you show the world, but the darkness you've buried beneath it. Carl Jung called this the shadow, the parts of yourself you deny, repress, and project onto others, not because they're evil, but because somewhere along the way you were taught they were unacceptable. You were too emotional, too angry, too sensitive, too loud, too much. So you split. You kept the parts that got you love and exiled the rest. But here's the paradox. What you suppress controls you. The more you avoid your fear, the more it drives your life from the dark. You lash out in anger, but tell yourself you're just honest. You chase unavailable people, but call it passion. You stay in places that drain you because discomfort feels like home. The shadow doesn't show up as a monster. It shows up as your habits, your patterns, your choices. It shows up in the people you attract and the pain you repeat. Not to punish you, but to reveal you. Jung believed that until we make the shadow conscious, we remain enslaved by it. Not because we're weak, but because we're afraid. And fear, left unexamined, becomes a compass that points nowhere. But here's the truth. Your fear is not your enemy, it's your initiation. It's the invitation to finally step beyond your persona and meet yourself in the dark. Because only in the dark can you begin to see what's real. And only by facing your shadow can you begin the journey to wholeness. So pause. Ask yourself this: what have I been hiding even from myself? What part of me am I afraid they'll see? Write it down. Say it out loud. Sit with it without shame. That's not weakness. That's the first step in reclaiming your power. In the next part, we'll explore what happens when you stop running and begin the process Jung called individuation, the return to your authentic self, not by escaping fear, but by walking straight into it. What it means to become yourself. You've met your fear. You've seen the shadow. But now what? Carl Jung believed that the true task of life is not to become perfect, but to become whole. This process is called individuation. It's not a buzzword. It's not self-help fluff. It's the slow, honest, and often painful journey of becoming who you really are, not the self you perform, not the self they approve of, the self you were before the world told you who to be. Individuation means integration. It means taking all the parts you've rejected, your sadness, your anger, your needs, and bringing them home. It means no longer chasing light while disowning your darkness. Because Jung was clear, there is no coming to consciousness without pain. Why? Because seeing who you really are requires burning who you pretended to be, and that's terrifying. This journey will cost you. It will cost you your comfort, your illusions, your false peace. You may lose people. You may lose approval. You will definitely lose the version of you that made everyone else comfortable. But what you gain is something the persona can never give you, a self that belongs to you. You stop performing. You start listening. You make decisions that feel true, even when they're not popular. You begin to live from the inside out. And that's when something incredible happens. You no longer need the world to approve your truth, because you've finally learned to trust it. So here's your invitation. Where in your life are you still choosing approval over authenticity? What would it cost you to be real? Let the answers come, even if they hurt, especially if they hurt, because pain is not the enemy, pretending is. In the next part, we'll look at the cost of not taking this path, what happens when fear wins, and how most people spend their lives surviving, but never living. The price of avoidance. Most people never become themselves, not because they're lazy, not because they don't care, but because they're afraid. Afraid of what will break if they stop pretending. Afraid of what will be exposed if they finally sit in silence. Afraid of what they'll lose if they say, "This isn't who I am anymore." So instead, they stay. They stay in jobs that numb them, relationships that shrink them, routines that slowly kill them. And they call it normal. Jung saw this everywhere. He believed that when we deny our inner truth, we don't just feel uneasy, we fracture. We live fragmented, split between the mask we wear and the voice we ignore. And that tension, that unbearable dissonance becomes suffering, sleepless nights, chronic anxiety, a sadness with no name. Because a life unlived doesn't disappear, it turns against you. You begin to resent others for living the freedom you deny yourself. You criticize what you secretly crave. You mock what reminds you of the dreams you buried. And yet, the pain never goes away, because your shadow never forgets. It keeps whispering, nudging, breaking through in moments of silence, until one day you've ignored it for so long, you no longer remember what it was saying. This is why Jung said, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Because the moment you do, there's no one else to blame. You can no longer say, it's their fault I'm unhappy. You realize you abandoned yourself. And that's when something shifts. Not in shame, but in power. Because if you abandoned yourself, you can also choose to return. Right now, take a moment. Ask yourself, what have I been tolerating that no longer feels true? Where have I been faking peace to avoid disruption? Write it. Feel it. Don't run from it. This is how you begin again. In the next part, we'll explore what happens when you choose the path of individuation, how facing fear, rather than avoiding it, leads to the deepest freedom possible. The courage to be whole. Something remarkable happens the moment you stop running. You stop chasing perfection, you stop hiding your fear, you stop asking others to validate a self you don't even fully recognize, and instead you turn inward. You sit with the pain, you feel the anger, you hold the grief without rushing it away. You realize everything you were avoiding was the path itself. Carl Jung believed that individuation isn't becoming someone else, it's becoming yourself completely. And to do that, you must face what you once buried, the pain you never processed, the decisions you never questioned, the beliefs you inherited but never agreed to. And here's the truth, that's not easy work. It's not glamorous, it doesn't come with applause. It comes with stillness, discomfort, and moments of terrifying clarity. But in that clarity, something sacred emerges, self-respect. Not the kind that shouts, but the kind that moves quietly, the kind that lets you walk away from what no longer fits without explanation. You no longer chase people who confuse you. You no longer explain yourself to be understood, because finally you understand you. This is the freedom Jung spoke of. Not a life without fear, but a life where fear no longer owns you, where you can say, I'm not who I used to be, and mean it, without apology, where your identity is not built on approval, but on alignment. So ask yourself, what would my life look like if I trusted my truth more than my fear? Let the answers surprise you. Let them break things open. That's not weakness. That's wholeness. That's the beginning of becoming who you were always meant to be. In the final part, we'll talk about what it means to return to yourself, to live unarmored, unafraid, and fully human. Because the end of this path is not perfection, it's presence. Returning to yourself. So this is where it leads. Not to a perfect version of you, not to a life without fear or flaw, but to a self that is finally real. You no longer need to perform. You no longer shrink to be loved. You no longer silence the voice that always knew the truth. You've faced the fear, you've met the shadow, you've walked through the fire and found out you didn't burn. You awakened. Carl Jung called this the sacred return, the reintegration of all you are. Not just the light, but the dark. Not just the healed parts, but the parts that still tremble. You don't need to fix them. You need to hold them. Because wholeness was never about perfection. It was about compassion. Think of how long you've spent trying to be what the world expected. How many moments you've lost waiting for permission to be you. How many "I'm fines" you've said with a breaking heart. But here you are now, breathing, still searching, still listening. That's enough. That's a beginning. Individuation isn't the end of struggle. It's the beginning of an honest relationship with life itself. You will still doubt. You will still ache. But now you'll do it awake, with both feet on the ground, with both hands on your truth, and a heart that no longer needs to be rescued. And here's what no one tells you. Once you stop performing, you start attracting real love, real friendships, real meaning. Because when you return to yourself, you become a mirror for others to do the same. That's how the world changes, not through force, but through presence. So if you're here, really here, say it. Not for me, for you. Say it in your journal. Say it in the comments. Say it in your bones. I am no longer hiding. And if you ever forget, come back to this moment, to this breath, to this self you finally chose. This is not a performance. This is a homecoming. And if no one told you this yet today, you are not behind. You are not broken. You are not too late. You are becoming exactly as you were meant to. Literally, freedom, true freedom, was never outside you. It was always waiting for you to remember who you really are. The self that watches. There is a moment somewhere along the journey where something shifts. You feel the fear, but you don't run. You hear the old voice that says you're not enough, but this time you don't believe it. You don't fight it. You don't suppress it. You just observe. Jung believed that healing doesn't come from destroying the ego, but from differentiating it. You are not the thought. You are the one who hears it. You are not the fear. You are the one who notices it arise. This is the beginning of what Jung called the transcendent function, the capacity to hold both your past self and your emerging self in the same breath, to say, yes, I was hurt. Yes, I acted out. Yes, I avoided truth. And I'm ready to change. That's not weakness. That's maturity. The willingness to sit with contradiction, to be both shadow and light without rejecting either. Most people try to heal by escaping who they were, but individuation means bringing that version of you back into the circle, not as the driver, but as the witness. Tonight, sit alone. No music, no distraction. Ask yourself, what does the watcher in me know that my fear keeps forgetting? Write what comes. Trust it. That voice, the one behind the noise, is your compass now. In the final part, we'll return to the source, Why this journey matters, not just for you, but for a world starving for wholeness. The world needs your wholeness. You didn't begin this journey just for yourself. You thought it was about healing your past, breaking patterns, finding peace. But Jung believed individuation was not isolation, it was integration. Because once you become whole, you don't disappear from the world, you return to it differently. You become the one who no longer reacts from pain, who no longer projects their shadow onto everyone else, who listens more than they speak, who chooses presence over performance. And the world notices, not because you're louder, but because you're real. And in a world addicted to illusions, authenticity is radical. Carl Jung once wrote, "The world will ask you who you are, and if you do not know, it will tell you." You've spent enough time being told, enough time being shaped, softened, silenced. Now you shape yourself, and by doing so, you make space for others to do the same. That's how healing becomes contagious. That's how wholeness spreads, not through force, not through preaching, but through embodiment. You will not save the world by fixing it. You will help heal the world by becoming someone who no longer needs it to validate their worth. You will make ripples every time you tell the truth and stay, every time you choose integrity over comfort, every time you forgive yourself and begin again. If something in you has shifted, don't let it pass. Anchor it, name it, live it. And if you feel alone on this path, remember, there are others walking beside you. Drop a comment, not for likes, but to say, I'm here, I'm becoming, I'm not hiding anymore. Let's build a space where honesty is honored, where healing is normal, where the shadow is no longer shameful, but sacred. Because the world doesn't need more perfection. It needs more people willing to be whole. And if no one has told you this yet today, you are not behind. You are not too much. You are not broken. You are becoming. And that's more than enough.